Good afternoon and welcome to Real News. These are real stories of real people brought to you by me, Agata Dewońska. In Ashburton, a lad from across the road has been spotted by a neighbour through the curtain, taking his exercise for ages on a gym he'd built at the side of his house. He then had been seen by the same neighbour going for a run up and down the road with his sister. Later on in the day, he was seen going for a walk with his mother. The neighbour has noted that was more than 1 hour of exercise a day. Jarek był w Indiach, kiedy epidemia dotarła do Europy w marcu i został zamknięty w szpitalu w Indiach na kwarantannie. Nikt nie powiedział mu, jak długo tam będzie. Miał wykupiony bilet powrotny samolotowy, który okazał się być jednym z ostatnich lotów z Indii do Polski. Czas płynął i wyglądało na to, że nie wydostanie się z tego odległego, egzotycznego kraju, gdzie nikt go nie zna. Był zrozpaczony. Indyjscy pracownicy szpitala czuli jego rozpacz i zorganizowali składkę ze swoich własnych zarobków na jego bilet powrotny. It was a miracle he managed to get home. A Devon resident Azerbaijani mother stops commuting to her law lecturing university post and for the first time in 20 years cooks her grandmother's traditional recipes for her children. The spell lasts for 10 days, during which she cooks 5 times a day. Then she calms down and realizes she's a good mother anyway. Susan usually gets old Gladys's shopping. She has been doing it for ages. When she brings the shopping in, she usually gives Gladys a squeeze and a kiss. They often have a cup of tea when there is a time. But lately, Susan brings Gladys shopping and she puts it on her doorstep. She rings the bell, and by the time Gladys has opened the door, Susan bolted to the garden gate. She smiles and says, "Hello, Glad." Gladys asks, "Aren't you coming in, Susan?" "Oh, no, Glad. We have to keep our distance, Glad. Wash your hands and wash your things, Glad." Oh, Glad thinks, why won't she give me a squeeze? Why won't she give me a little kiss? It's like nobody coming round. Hazel wants to plant some seeds, so she puts out a call on a local email exchange for pots, and she's given a whole wheelbarrow of different size pots. And then she plants all kinds of things. She's got beans and chard and beetroot and potatoes and marigolds and red cabbage, and it's all on her vegetable beds now. Her daughters wanted to do some sewing, so they put out another call for patterns, and a woman gave them a whole bag from her attic of old patterns from the 80s of various fabrics, and the girls have begun sewing bunting, bags and clothes and costumes, and now they're watching YouTube videos on how to make historical costumes. Nearby there is a lovely circuit walk that many walk for their daily walk, and some of the local children have chalked a course along the route. On the road, so there are places to do skippings, hopscotch and race with your family member, do a twirl or yoga or cartwheel or jump or do some ballet or pirouette or walk backwards, zigzag, follow the maze, a spiral, bark like a dog, moo like a cow. Draw some flowers with chalk, sing your favourite song, lots of different things, all along the route, all in colourful chalk. The newsreader scratches her head and realizes she's reporting her own behavior. She's confused and feels exposed. She wants to cover it up and looks into the camera in panic. She's silent for a while, hoping that might change it, but it doesn't. She looks around, she touches her chest and realizes that's what's in the script. Mary is high risk, and she was told to stay at home before lockdown. She lives alone in a tiny hamlet. She's not been out of her flat for 2 months. She's not been touched by a human being for 8 weeks and would now give anything for a hug. Her job is helping workers with health and safety procedures across hundreds of workplaces. She knows hundreds of pages of PPE guidelines that are being published by Public Health England and the government for all different sectors that she covers. She answers a lot of questions for 10, 12 hours a day on Emergency Hub across the whole region. She answers queries from workers in school, hospitals, councils, ambulance services, police, care homes, residential homes and more. She doesn't know the official news, but she hears the actual experience of many people. These stories and voices echo around in her lounge and in her head, going into her sleep. Stories of people not having protective equipment, whose manager wants to lock them in the care home. People who don't have childcare. Hospital workers living in hotels to protect their family members. They share what they are thinking of and what they're scared of. She wonders about them a lot. She gets transported to the car they are calling her from, or a cupboard of a care home that they locked themselves in to call this emergency number. She's spoken to hundreds of people in the last 2 months. She can imagine them in their uniforms or on their wards. She wonders if they think about her, and if they do, they probably don't imagine her tiny cottage in her tiny hamlet, with her very bad broadband, in her pyjamas, with a cat on her lap, sometimes lying down because of the pain in her body, where she gets to be on the front line several times a day. Kate, in self-isolation, follows the sun from her flat in Totnes. Lying in her bed in the early morning, fresh warm light of sunrise kisses her face and invites her into the day. She drinks it in with her morning coffee in front of an open window, and she jealously follows its arc before it disappears at 11 a.m. behind a church tower. After it has gone, there is gloominess and dull shadows. By mid-afternoon, the sun swings by again at the back of the house. A startling shaft of sunlight cuts diagonally across the living room, and Kate's Christmas cactus blazes in crimson glory. There is transient bliss as she sits lazily in a freshly opened sunspot in the courtyard. Then she's chasing it again, hungry for flashes of it, above the wall, behind a tree, between the rooftops. Then she can follow it no more, as it circles out of sight and is westwards bound. Kaya is a doctor who runs a homeless practice in a hostel in Plymouth. Because of travel restrictions during lockdown, the supply of heroin in Plymouth has dried out. Several residents of the hostel, who have been addicted for decades, had asked for methadone, a substitution medicine to lessen the effects of their withdrawal symptoms. In early April, Kaya was conducting her clinic at the hostel on the phone. She called one of her long-term patients, 30-year-old woman who has been using for 15 years and felt like a lost cause. Every time they spoke in the past, she was high, looking neglected and being emotionally unstable. On that morning, she answered the phone in a new voice. She had clearly changed. She had presence in her like never before. Kaya felt an easy, uninterrupted connection between them. She was astonished and played a little chorus of celebration in her head. The patient reported she was really good. In her room, listening to music, not needing to go out and find money for drugs. They talked about what she might enjoy doing now that she is free, and she admitted she liked painting. Now that she was not buying drugs and actually had money to buy art materials. So she said she was going to do it and learn painting by numbers. Kaya came out of the office wanting to tell everybody about this. She told the receptionist and other staff in the hostel. They often felt disheartened about their work, with so many people using, dealing and prostituting there. Now, because of the lockdown, the whole place has transformed into a self-created rehab facility. And that's all from Real News for today. Thank you very much for listening. I am your reporter, Agata Devońska.